Welcome to the Planning Commission on July 28, 2022. While we're getting settled in here, I'll just remind us the way we proceed is we will have a staff member present the case, covering the highlights of it and answering any questions from the Planning Commission. Then we'll invite the applicant to come up and add anything they would like to the presentation and take further questions. Then we will have a public hearing, at which time members of the public will be welcome to come up to the microphone and take up to 3 minutes to share their thoughts on the case. Then we will have the applicant back up to respond to anything that came up in the public hearing, and then the commission will deliberate and act on the case. Before we begin, we will ask the planning commissioners if they have any conflicts of interest with any of the cases today.
Regarding, where are we at here? 634 and 638 Stocking Avenue Northwest. I do have a personal relationship with some of the family related to the ownership of the property.
You have a financial interest in the project?
I do not.
Do you feel like do you have information about the project that the rest of the Planning Commission would not have access to?
I do not.
I move that the commissioner does not have a conflict of interest with regard to 634, 638 Stocking Avenue Northwest.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further conflicts to disclose? Hearing none, we'll move into our first case.
The first item on the agenda is a request to expand an existing surface parking lot into a residential zone district and to provide parking in excess of the maximum permitted. The address of the property is 2807 Lake Michigan Drive, and the property is improved with a building that houses Planet Fitness as well as some medical office uses. As you can see in this slide, the subject parcel is mostly zoned mid-century neighborhood commercial. A portion of the property right up here is zoned mid-century neighborhood low-density residential. So the property is split in two separate zone districts, and the current improvements on the property are within the commercial part of the zone district. The applicant is requesting to expand their parking lot by 28 parking spaces, and that would be in the residential portion. That residential portion is currently, it's unimproved. However, it's sort of difficult to see. There is a stormwater detention basin there that serves the existing development. We have a multi-family development to the west. That's the Marsh Ridge Senior Community. And we have low-density residential on Collindale, north and to the east, also further north. The property is about 4 acres in area. The building's about 38,000 square feet. It was originally home to Shawmut Hills Power Sports, and I don't think I have a photo here, but in the past, up until Planet Fitness occupied the site, I think that was up until about 2017, there were storage sheds occupying this concrete area, and this whole back portion of what's now the parking lot was just used for storage. So now, when Planet Fitness went in, this was striped for parking, and it provides parking for the 24-hour fitness center. 24-hour fitness center. There is currently a landscape buffer. It's about 31 feet wide. I have had some calls from neighbors, and it sounds like there's some holes in that landscaping, and I think that was probably, originally it wasn't a parking lot, but I've heard that there's some impacts of the parking on the folks that live there. Relative to the future land use map, it's sort of interesting, the commercially zoned property is in this red, and this yellow color is low-density residential. This orange is medium-density or high-density residential. There's sort of a little appendage here, and that is the area in question here. It's the future land use map appears to indicate that the future land use is commercial. As you're considering this, please take into account that it is still zoned residential. And I'd also like to mention that this future land use map is it's a general guide, and this particular map is not, it doesn't make recommendations on a lot-by-lot basis. That's more of the work of an area-specific plan. So onto the existing conditions, we've got the parking lot and the existing detention basin. In order to facilitate the expansion to the north, some trees would need to be removed. The applicant is proposing 28 new parking spaces, and the appropriate increase in detention and water quality requirements associated with the new impervious surface. So based on these preliminary plans, as well as the final plans that would need to be submitted if approved, all additional stormwater detention or stormwater created by this additional parking would be collected in this basin. And the applicant's engineer can expand on anything that I got wrong or that should be addressed. The applicant is proposing a significant amount of landscaping around the parking area on both sides. That would be reviewed for conformance with our zoning ordinance requirements at the time of permitting, if the Planning Commission is amenable to this use. A trash enclosure is proposed, and we are very happy about that. I did receive some concerns from the neighbors to the west in Marsh Ridge about the location of this trash enclosure. And I guess I would recommend, if at all possible, it would be nice to have the trash enclosure somewhere else that wouldn't impact the residential neighbors as much. Ideally, we'd love to see it next to the building. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be something that could be conditioned. And that might be something to discuss with the applicant today. So they will be meeting the green space and tree canopy requirements, and that will be confirmed at LUD's permitting. We will be looking at that at LUD's permitting. If the Planning Commission is amenable to this expansion, we might ask that as a condition of approval, which has been included in the draft resolution, that the holes in the buffer be filled, because if this is approved, we would anticipate more traffic, coming up onto this west side to use this additional parking. We would also ask that the parking lot landscape screening be brought closer to conformity with current requirements. Now, the applicant is asking for this because of their uses on the site. And I think that the applicant will be able to talk about this, but it's a 24-hour fitness center. And although the existing parking lot exceeds the requirements, during their busy times of year, the applicant is indicating that the existing parking lot is insufficient. We have had the applicant has submitted some additional check-in data, which is in the packet. That wasn't in it last Friday, but this last week we've augmented the packet to include that. It's more recent check-in data, but they provided check-in data from January and February, which is the busiest time of year, as well as data from more recent months. And the applicant, I know, will be happy to talk about that with you if you have any questions. They also, I do have it here. So we have it here for reference if you do need to talk about that. They also provided some photographs from various dates. And I won't go through all of these, but it's intended to show, from their perspective, their need for parking. So this additional parking greater than 120% of what is required is that second part of what the Planning Commission will be considering today. It's the expansion of the parking into the residential zone district, as well as parking in excess of 120% of what is required. So I think I've gone over that whole application. I do want to mention, well, I have mentioned, but that some neighbors have submitted letters of opposition, and I included one of these letters that had some attachments in case anyone is here to speak to that. So, or if the Planning Commission wishes to talk about it. So, in sum, we are looking at the expansion of parking into a residential, as well as parking greater than what is required, and both of those are special land uses. Do you have any questions for me before I turn it over to the applicant?
What's the access to that property aside from this property? Is there any other access to it?
No. I mean, this is all one, it's all one parcel. It falls in two zone districts, but it is one parcel. The access to this additional parking is the same, there are no changes to access. There's a curb cut or a drive access on Lake Michigan Drive, and there's also one on Collindale.
Thank you. I mistook the zone district line as a parcel line.
Oh.
Thank you. Any other questions for Elizabeth? Okay, and we'll invite the applicant up.
Commissioners, my name is Steve Whitty from Netterveld, here tonight, or today, representing Planet Fitness. With me in attendance today is Pat Schaefer from Planet Fitness. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration regarding this request. I think Elizabeth did a great job, not only in her staff report, but then also kind of telling you a little bit about this request and why we're here. There is a definite need for this additional parking. Planet Fitness submitted check-in times. Like Elizabeth said, the busiest time of year is actually January and February and then into March. So you can see that in what was submitted, in those 4-hour periods, there's quite often cases where they have 500 check-ins during that time period. So there's a definite need there for the additional parking. The photos that were submitted kind of clearly show that as well. I think the neighbors may have submitted other photos, but those other photos were from certain times of the day and later in the year, where it's quite frankly not as busy as what it is at the start of the year. With the application, I know there are special use standards that have to be met. I did address those in the application itself, so I won't repeat that, but I just kind of like to highlight on a couple of the arguments that I think are valid arguments for this use and for this expansion. First of all, this is simply an expansion of an existing parking lot. So this isn't a new parking lot by any means. It's just expanding an existing lot approximately 60 feet to the north of what's already existing. There is no new access points provided or proposed on public streets, so the access will be exactly the same. The master plan designates this area as commercial, and I fully realize the master plan is a guideline and it can be plus or minus, but I've also seen master plans cut off properties, and that's not the case here. It actually shows it as commercial. Maybe the biggest thing is this parking expansion costs a significant amount of money, investment in money, time, effort. And when you have a business owner that is willing to invest that money in a parking lot, it really shows me that there is a need for it, because if there wasn't a need for it, he wouldn't be spending the money or the effort to try to get this in. As far as setbacks are concerned, what is proposed meets and exceeds the ordinance. I think the ordinance requires a 10-foot setback, generally speaking. We have 31 feet. In addition, we are providing landscaping, pretty significant landscaping along the west and the east sides of the expansion. From a green area standpoint on the lot, in total, I think we need 15%, generally speaking, and we have over 30% from what I calculate. So there is plenty of green space left over. From a drainage design standpoint, the adjusted detention basin is sized for a 100-year storm per City of Grand Rapids requirements. I have spoken with Dan Tabor conceptually and given him calculations for that. We'll work with Dan pending approval tonight for the LUDS permit. I know Dan is in attendance, so he could speak to that if you'd like him to. And then lastly, I just want to point out that Pat Schaefer, again from Planet Fitness, has attempted to do an outreach to the neighborhood. He wasn't able to meet with everybody, but I know he has made a concerted effort to talk to the neighbors in the area. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I guess one final thing that I'd point out is this expansion is actually kind of the furthest away from the existing doors. So really, quite frankly, this is going to probably be the last parking area filled up. So when it comes to noise and congestion in that area, this is probably the last area that's going to be filled up. So you just keep that in mind. As far as the dumpster location is concerned, Pat and I just talked, and we'd be fine with, right now the dumpster is shown here, but we're fine with moving it over here. That would give a little bit more separation from the multifamily to the west of us. So again, no problem in moving the dumpster here. And then we can work with city staff during the LUDS permit approval process to make sure that any holes in the landscaping along the west buffer are filled in. So I think that covers everything, but if you have any questions on the site plan, engineering, or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to answer those types of questions. If you have anything business-wise, Pat knows infinitely more about that than I do. So again, I appreciate your time today, and I don't know, Pat, if you have anything to add or if you're good. So thank you.
Regarding the dumpster location, that would move it away from the neighbors to the west, but it would move it closer to the neighbors to the east.
Correct. And the only difference there that I would see is that, there's obviously more people living to the west, and then the homes on to the east of us are further away. So if this is the outline of the existing building to the west of us. So this distance here is going to be closer than the distance from here to the residence. But either way is fine with us. I just mentioned that because I think one of the neighbors had expressed concerns about the dumpster location. The other thing to point out is, the existing dumpsters are kind of where my hand is hovering now, and they're not enclosed. So this new one would be enclosed.
Is there a reason they could not be located adjacent to the building itself?
We could look at that. The problem there is the trash truck has to have an approach to it. So like if I put the dumpster here, unless the parking lot is empty, it's going to be difficult to impossible for a trash truck to pick it up. So normally the dumpsters have to be at the end of a row. So that's why we were thinking either here or here made the most sense.
Thank you. And maybe the operator could comment on the typical time of day that the trash gets picked up. Do you happen to know?
That would vary based on, their schedules. I don't know the exact times.
For the record, unknown.
Correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Whitty?
I have a quick question about the current, it's always hard for us to see
Yeah.
the layout here on these screens. The current vegetation that's there to the west of the lot, in the drawings, are these all new, or are some of them existing?
Some of them are existing, so like, I don't know if you can see where I'm hovering here. So like this symbol here, these are existing trees that are surveyor shot.
Okay,
And then where the new one starts is basically north of where my thing is hovering now. So
they're
this is
bubbles,
all
okay.
new. And then likewise, all of these are actually all new. There's nothing existing there now.
okay,
I don't know if you can follow what I'm saying there. And then like there's two landscape trees in this island that are proposed.
okay.
But again, south of here, this is existing. And then our surveyors didn't shoot the trees here, so apparently there's a gap or two in there or more. So we'll work with city staff again to make sure those are filled.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the operator could approach, please. I have some questions. So one of the concerns of the west, I guess the neighbors to the west, is mostly like light related regarding headlights and things of that nature for a 24-hour operation, right? But it seems to me that based on the testimony of your engineer that probably those would be the last ones filled, or, I mean, I know there's no guarantee for that. People park where they want to. But do you think that between the hours of, say, I don't know, 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and like, I don't know, well, I guess it would be PM. So like 8 p.m. at night and 6 or 7 in the morning, is that going to be the heaviest use of that parking lot that might face those residents in terms of headlights?
No, so I will modify. So we have switched since the application to a 24/5 model as well. So we are open from midnight Sunday until Friday at 9 p.m. and then only 7 to 7 on the weekends. But again, yes, our busiest times are, the reason we gave those numbers between 4 and 7 p.m.
Right.
So not to say that there aren't people, but likely they're going to park
Right.
closest to the door and not affecting that back area.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll open up the public hearing for anyone who would like to come and comment on the case. Please come to the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
My name is Brian Parent. Quick question before I begin. There's a couple other residents, neighbors here of Collindale Avenue as well. Each an individual 3 minutes or collective 3 minutes?
Each person.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, my name is Brian Parent. I am one of the residents of Collindale Avenue that is kind of to the north and east of the proposed site here. Thank you for having me up here. The number of 500 check-ins sounds like a lot in comparison to the 192 proposed sites, but the nature of traffic is that it ebbs and flows. People arrive, people depart. The largest number of arrivals that I saw from The applicant's data in the busiest time of the year was 137. That is about 70% of their parking lot capacity. So close, but we're not full, we're not overflowing. There's still space for more arrivals to show up. So for that reason alone, I don't foresee the need to expand the parking space. With your assistance on this matter through the past week, I appreciate your time. We had submitted a letter to the commissioners as well for other reasons that we do oppose this. And between the noise and the construction, the additional traffic in an already busy area, and the ask to expand beyond what is already at the city maximum, it seems like an overpush. I don't think it's necessary. In my visits to the parking lot, as the engineer had mentioned, I never once saw the lot full. I never saw it at half capacity. So again, I just don't see the need for additional spaces when the space capacity that exists isn't being fully utilized. And thank you, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bob Flack. I've unique here because I'm a member of Planet Fitness and I'm a neighbor over 20 years in that house. So I've seen a lot there. I've gone in the winter, busy section. Now me and my wife go 2 check-ins, 1 car. All right, so check-ins can be misleading. People do carpool. I've never had a problem in the busy season. Gone there January, February, after work, busiest times. Not a problem. It does get busy. Sometimes you do have to park far away. Not a problem. Again, people are there to get an exercise, so if they park far away, no big deal. One of my biggest concerns is, and this is, I wanted to bring up attention a long time ago, back when Shawma Hills did expansion there, that retention pond that's up there does not work. I'm not sure what engineering did it or what. It can be, our yards are flooded in the back, and I've walked to the woods to check out that, and that thing's bone dry. Don't know what's going on there, but I think that definitely needs to get addressed before this decision gets made, because that retention pond does not work. It is all wet around it and in our backyards, but inside it is dry. Again, I'm not an engineer, so I do not know what's going on. I meant to say something years ago, but never got an opportunity. Thought this was a good opportunity for it. We are concerned about the headlights. If it was approved, we definitely want a lot of shrubbery, especially in the winter, because the foliage gets really thin. You can see through the yards real easy right now. So, that's a big issue, is like you need evergreens or something like that that stays all year round, because again, the busy season is the winter. That's the darkest season too. So you get the most headlights, and so you are going to get most exposure to headlights. And so, like I said, I've been going to Planet Fitness, so I know how busy they are. I have more of an issue getting on a machine than a parking spot in the busy time. So take for that whatever it's worth. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on this case?
Hi, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to express our dissent. I live right here at 449 Collindale, the address most directly affected by this proposed plan. I'm here with my wife, special education teacher. I myself am an Afghanistan war veteran. I suffer from PTSD that takes the form of anxiety and panic attacks. When I bought this house a few months ago, it was with the understanding that this was zoned residential. I was drawn to the house. It's a nice, small, cute house. But what really was the selling point for us was the large, expansive yard that we have with the beautiful nature behind it. We've got this beautiful willow tree. We've got a couple of maple trees, eastern redbuds. And since moving here, it's been sort of an oasis for me. it's been very healing. We've had lots of family events where we've been able to hang out and enjoy that beautiful area together. I think it's important to note that this proposed development is a raised area. So any car traffic, people hanging out in that area will be able to look down directly onto the neighbors' lawns. I have pictures on my phone of what it looks like now, and it'll be way worse. I'd also like to point out that currently the amount of traffic causes a lot of pollution. We've got I've got pictures on my phone again of just the trash that's littered around that dumpster spreading out towards our yard, and it's only going to get worse with this expansion. I was mowing my lawn a couple days ago and there was a Wendy's cup just sitting there in my lawn. This will only get worse with the proposed development. My primary concerns with this revolves around destruction of the natural environment by putting in a parking lot. The noise and light pollution with this 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day business throughout the week. We go to bed early. We've already been woken up by noise in the parking lot. And although the entrance to the building, which is somewhere around here, people park back here already. This is one of the first areas that fill up. I don't know why, but that's the case. I think people don't like to park in the middle of other cars. They like to spread to the outsides first. But it's troublesome. So the noise and light pollution, the destruction of the natural beauty, the actual pollution with the litter. We wish we could have afforded a lawyer to come and fight this case, but we weren't able to. As a new member of the community, this seems like a pure money grab that's absolutely unnecessary. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you willing to state your name for the record?
Christopher Smith.
Christopher Smith, thank you. Our recording secretary is doing this by video, so I'm just trying to make sure we're clear. Anyone else would like to comment on this case today? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and invite the applicant back up.
Yeah, again, appreciate your time today and appreciate the neighbors coming here and expressing their concern. I jotted down some of the concerns. I think I got them all, but if I missed something, let me know. Again, there is a definite need for this parking. As I indicated, this is simply for a parking lot expansion. So there's no net gain dollar-wise for the applicant. So it's not like a new business or anything like that. It's simply an expansion of an existing business because there's a need for it. If there was no need for it, Planet Fitness won't be spending this effort and this money to try to get these additional 28 parking spaces. As far as the detention basin is concerned, I can definitely work with city staff during the LUD's permit to look closer at that. I've already done all the design and the calculations for the detention basin and the modification for that. It does meet the city's stormwater ordinance standards. And again, I'll work with Dan and maybe we can do some sort of different restriction on the outlet or something of that nature, but we will definitely take care of that. From a landscaping standpoint, as I indicated, we're willing to fill in the gaps along the west property line. The vast majority of the parking is already there. So again, this is just simply expanding by 28 spaces. We are proposing new landscaping on both sides of the expansion. We can work with city staff and specifically pick out specific evergreen trees to block the headlights and to provide better screening for the neighbors. So there's no problem there. And then related to that, again, the setbacks are met and exceeded with this parking lot addition. So we're not encroaching on anything that would normally be required from a setback standpoint. And then our opinion, again, is that the northern parking spaces likely will be the last ones filled. So even though this is an expansion, typically people do park closest to the door. So that's important to note. So I think that's pretty much everything, but if I missed anything or if you have any other specific question that you would like either Pat or I to address, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you again.
What portion, a part of this building is a medical building or medical offices? And what are their hours of operation?
The A current tenant is Athletico, so they, for physical therapy, they have normal, business hours during the day, and then also, we recently agreed with another tenant, which is a dental office, which will also just be normal hours of the day. So we do have one tenant space remaining, which is again, a parking concern.
Are you able, though, since your busy time is, say, 4 to 7, when the other offices would be closed, are you able to utilize that parking, or is there a barrier around that?
No, there's no barrier. There is an overlap in terms of, with extended hours, 5 to 6 p.m., but the other part of the other issue is, again, with the January, February, we have snow removal, and with the amount of snow, we typically lose some of the spaces just to try and, get the snow off of as many areas as possible. But we do, lose spaces during that time. Obviously, we know the area gets a fair amount of snow during the winter.
But you could use some of these front spaces.
And they are. If you view the pictures, there was actually some pictures taken along the front of the building in which those spots are utilized. So, yeah, if you back up. Sorry, there was one that was one more. Okay, so this view is actually the front of the building. So you can see the spaces along that front, and towards the tenant spaces are actually being utilized, and even the ones out on Lake Michigan Drive as well.
So in the upper corner on the left side, are those spaces available?
There are spaces along Lake Michigan Drive, but that's actually the entrance where that car is coming in.
Oh, okay. But there aren't parking spaces there?
I could also address, so the pictures and the traffic counts that were provided by the neighbors, the numbers, if you look at the comparison between the June and July check-ins versus the January, February check-ins, they're less than half in most cases. So we're in excess of 500, and there was days in which they took pictures where there was only 230 check-ins over the course of, a 4-hour period. So a very significant difference.
So it sounds to me like this is a very limited time period of the year, a couple months, and a limited time of the day from 4 to 7 that you have this problem.
It's busy in the morning, the morning hours as well. So again, with Steve's comments, this is a significant investment. If it wasn't necessary, there's, clearly we would not be doing this. And I guess, if I can add a little bit of commentary, it wasn't long ago that our business was closed for 6 months, right? So we managed to survive that. We've come out of it. We're, starting to grow. And as an example of the challenges that parking can provide, we're aware of some growth challenges with the relatively new downtown Grand Rapids Planet Fitness, based on the fact that, there's inadequate parking and a challenge to find parking around that facility.
Thank you.
What do you do currently for just trash pickup, generally speaking? That's a really large area. We've had some complaints that haven't been addressed yet from the neighbors regarding trash. What is your general plan?
Staff has an assigned time on a regular basis in which to walk the parking lot and pick up any necessary trash, any trash that, happens.
And do you find that they do that?
I hope so.
It sounds like maybe you need to check. Do you think that you're a good neighbor, Mr. Schaefer?
We've tried to be. Again, I did some personal outreach to the people that I was able to contact in the area. At that time, none of them, proposed any objection to this. We are willing to, again, not only invest in the parking lot, but a nice landscaping barrier, which, to be honest with you, I think would improve the looks of the area. Again, I understand the objections and the concerns, and we'll do our best to address those in any way we can from a design perspective. But, we're doing the best we can in terms of trying to operate and grow the business as well as, address the concerns of the neighbors.
And then the retaining pond, I feel like there was a complaint about it being dry, but the backyard being wet. Like, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah.
Either one of you.
As I said, I can work with Dan during the LUD's permit and take a
Okay.
closer look at that. I can say that the volume that's provided in that holding area is per the city standards and per 100-year storm event. So see Dan wandering up, so you can elaborate on that too, so.
Hello, I'm Daniel Tabor. I'm a project engineer here with the City of Grand Rapids, and I do all the development reviews and things like that. So I've been working with Steve and done initial reviews of the proposed improvements, and as proposed, the enlargement of the existing detention pond meets city standards, meets city stormwater standards, and it's designed for the 100-year storm, and that's our most stringent standard. So in that sense, the proposed modifications to the pond due to the parking lot enlargement meet city stormwater code. And then in reference to the neighbor's observation of the pond being dry and the backyards being wet, I could see that being true and being an issue. A situation of this site is the site grading in the lot for the building is based off Lake Michigan Drive grades, and that is higher than Collindale. So this building and this detention pond sit higher up than the adjacent properties on Collindale. So the Lake Michigan Drive property and its detention basin could be working as intended and per code and can be dry, and there still could be some surrounding challenges on Collindale just because it's at a lower elevation, and that portion of Collindale was annexed into the city. So there's not the traditional stormwater infrastructure like catch basins and storm sewer pipes to facilitate drainage in the area. So the homes and residents on Collindale being in kind of almost a bowl can create some challenges, but I wouldn't say that's directly related to anything that of a malfunctioning detention pond or anything like that. So some clarification there. And any questions from the commission on that? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the applicant? Yes.
I have a few questions. Mr. Whitty, Mr. Schaefer, a couple questions for you. Do you know the occupancy load for the building itself?
I do not. I don't know if Pat knows or not.
I do not, I'm sorry.
It's 486.
486
For Planet Fitness.
for Planet Fitness. Do we know what the occupancy rate is for the rest of the building, Elizabeth? Or
Well, I can look up the other building permits.
okay,
But we have an open space, so I wouldn't know what that is.
okay, thank you. And do you guys have an understanding of what the vacant? Is there someone that's looking at the vacant facility as for a vacant space at this point?
Not currently, it's for lease.
With regard to the landscaping on what would be the east side of the property line along Mr. Smith's property, Steve, did your team look at trying to maintain that tree line, the existing tree line, as part of the grading for that site?
The proposed grading, I think, pretty much matches the existing grading out there. Again, we can work with city staff and make sure that this buffer here is beefed up. When I gave this to our landscape architects, I pointed out that the concern would be to block headlights and to provide a nice buffer. So that's what this illustrates. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but we can definitely work with city staff.
Well,
and
there's an
make sure
existing tree line, it looks like along the property there. Was there any thought of trying to maintain or keep that when site construction's going on for the?
Elizabeth, can you go, or go back to the existing condition. So our surveyors, when I send surveyors out to the site, I always ask them to locate trees that are 4-inch caliper or larger. So these are the trees that they shot here, and I don't see that they shot trees here, so I don't know if those trees are on the neighboring property or if they're here, but I can definitely take a look at that, and if there are existing trees on our site, we can look at trying to save those, definitely.
I think it's always good practice to do that if
Correct,
if you
yeah.
can. And one of the nearby residents had
Yep.
mentioned that that was one attraction to purchasing the property was the existing trees.
Definitely.
In that same area, the setback on the west side is 31 feet, but it's clearly not 31 feet on the east side.
It's 11 feet on the east side. Yep.
And the minimum allowable is 10, correct?
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Kent, did I cut you off? Okay, anything else for the applicant? Thank you. Commissioners?
I'm inclined to support the request, assuming that the landscaping is going to be an improvement from the picture that I saw before, and that I would hope that the applicant overdoes it on the landscaping, particularly, you know, that one side. But it looks like a pretty dusty kind of blank area, and the idea of more trees and maybe some improvements to, you know, the site, and realizing that a business isn't going to put this money into something unless they really need it. So that's where I am inclined to be right now.
Oh, did you have something?
Oh, go for it.
Oh, I'm just a little confused about the basin. I guess I don't really know how that works, but it's there. They're going to do some stuff to it if we approve the parking lot, and it works for the building itself along Lake Michigan, but it doesn't work for the neighbors. So I guess I'm just confused. What's the point then of the basin if it only works for this building? Is it supposed to work for the neighbors or just the building?
Yeah, well, Mr. Tabor is coming up.
Sorry, I'm not the brightest
yeah.
crayon in the box. I'm just.
No, it is a very much appropriate and fair question. So what this is, it's a on-site private detention basin. This detention basin was built, I think, approximately 2004 when it was the small office building that was existing became Shawmont Hills. So city standards, city codes require commercial developments and other developments of certain size to manage their stormwater. And this is what this on-site private detention system is. I'm emphasizing detention because this pond is meant to hold water, let the storm pass, and let, you know, stuff dry out and slowly release it. And this facility is a private facility, so it's not managed or maintained by the city, but it's a on-site private feature. So,
Got it.
So it collects the water, stores it, and then slowly releases it, is the general principle of it.
Okay, got it. And is there a way, I don't know, in my head, I'm just thinking, can we, I don't know, a pipe, a tube, a straw for drainage for the neighbors? Is there?
Well, and that's where the kind of the challenge of the grading and the area and the contours is this drainage infrastructure is higher than the surrounding area. So pumping stuff uphill and things like that is I don't think is a conducive or a solution here for that.
Do you know if are there flooding problems for those neighbors?
We've had reports of standing water in rear yard, in their yard. I'm not aware of any like structural or building flooding issues, but honestly, I've seen emails and stuff going back to early 2000s where, drainage along Collindale is a challenge because it is a low spot and there's not much stormwater infrastructure.
I live in this neighborhood, yes, is the answer to that.
Yeah, but it's not related to the commercial development there, is what I hear you say.
Not my understanding of it, no.
Dan, one more question.
Sure.
With landscaping, from my personal background with stormwater management, that additional landscaping, and correct me if I'm wrong, around the proposed area and partially around that detention pond would actually also slow down some of that runoff.
Correct. Additional trees, additional landscaping helps with taking up the water and slowing off runoff and, collecting runoff before it, causes erosion on slopes. So yes, additional landscaping, additional trees, additional plantings would definitely help with stormwater management. And the interesting part of this site design is the parking lot expansion is going on existing parts of the detention basin, so it's already been a constructed area. In order to meet city regulations, it's deepening the pond, so it's not necessarily getting into native green spaces or tearing down natural trees or natural wooded areas. I would say it's a reconfiguration of existing infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Any more discussion, or I can make a motion? Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the request of JP 2807 Lake Michigan Drive LLC, Pat Schaefer, for special land use approval to expand an existing surface parking lot into a residential zone district and provide parking in excess of the maximum permitted at 2807 Lake Michigan Drive Northwest for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the parking expansion supports the purpose and intent of the adjacent MCN-C zone district to accommodate vehicles at an appropriate level while still emphasizing the importance of pedestrians and public transportation in the built environment. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08E because the parking expansion will be designed to meet all standards. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment. Because the parking lot expansion is limited in scale, the use of the expansion is anticipated to be used during the first several months of the year. Stormwater will be managed as required by city code. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use on the neighborhood and adjacent properties will be minimized through adequate parking lot screening and landscaping. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare because the proposed parking lot expansion is not anticipated to result in excessive noise, glare, or visual clutter. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment. Because the appropriate site improvements have been proposed to facilitate safe and efficient pedestrian circulation, the proposed parking lot screening will help reestablish the street wall. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or the economic welfare of the city because any new infrastructure will be provided at the cost of the applicant. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to the project. Standard conditions, Set A approvals. That the application and plan submitted to the applicant and signed, dated, and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans, except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and/or as amended in this resolution. That the use shall operate according to the application and per testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. That this approval does not include any proposed signs, and any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. That a land use development services, LUDS permit, building permit, and all other required permits be obtained from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. That any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. That the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. That this approval shall take effect 16 calendar days from the date of the Planning Commission's decision. 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission's decision. That this existing parking lot buffering along the west lot line be augmented due to anticipated increase in activity in that area. That the parking lot screening shall be provided along Lake Michigan Drive frontage to bring the site closer to conformity with the current regulation. Any other discussion?
We have the motion and support. Would you consider adding a condition regarding the trash enclosure?
I would, moving the trash enclosure to the opposite side of the parking lot, so the eastern corner. Does that make sense? Is that good, Elizabeth?
Or the building wall.
Or the building wall?
Or as far away from residential uses as possible? I don't know, I guess it's, we might need to explore it further. I don't know what the best.
I think we need to be more specific than that. As close to the building as possible? Are we comfortable with that?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I second the amendment.
All right, let that condition sink in, make sure that's good. When we say, I guess, Mr. Kent, when we say brought into closer conformity with current regulations, how does that usually play out, and what would we actually expect to see in that case?
Are we talking with the dumpster enclosure itself?
No, I'm back on number 3, the parking lot screening along Lake Michigan Drive to be brought into closer conformity with current regulations.
Yeah, so as Mr. Whitty had mentioned, he would work with staff to fill in those vacant voids, or as part of the landscape plan, the vacant voids of the existing buffer yard, looking on the east side of the property, the landscaping there as well, and then to try to address the dumpster enclosure as well. Looks like Elizabeth has something to share.
Well, I think there's 2 elements. So I think number 2 was augmenting, condition number 2 was augmenting the existing landscaping screening here to fill in all those holes. And then I think to your question, Commissioner Rosaboom, was the parking lot screening is really this area here and possibly here. We have there's a couple of trees, but we currently have parking lot landscape screening requirements. They have some. There are a number of options for them. Nederveld has lots of experience doing that. They'll come up with a landscape design based on their experience that would meet our requirements.
My thing that I'm contemplating is requesting that the motion be strict compliance in this case because of the sensitivity of the neighbors and the use here. Normally, I'm comfortable with that, but I'm wondering if that would be onerous to ask for strict compliance with requirements as opposed to closer into conformity.
The closer to conformity, I think, is only this area here, and I'm not sure, I might be wrong, but I'm not sure that this is the area of concern for neighbors. So, I mean, we could say strict compliance, but, you know, I don't know what the dimensions are. I guess, since I don't know all the conditions there, I left it sort of vague.
Understood. Okay, thank you. So the neighbors could expect that to the west, that will be brought into current compliance with current requirements?
Right. I think there's some holes where there's no understory trees or smaller shrubs that would serve to block the headlights, and so that's really what we're looking for.
Just to add one other thing to that, you know, if you do mention strict conformance all along Lake Michigan Drive, the existing pavement, you know, the city has greenbelt requirements, so like in this area here, it would really mess up the entire site if the planning commission said strict compliance along Lake Michigan Drive. So we'd appreciate some flexibility to work with staff, come up with something nice in this island, and then kind of leave it at that. So thank you.
That does seem appropriate to me after that explanation.
I agree.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Wallace.
It passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next case is 638, 634 Stocking.
The next request is a request to expand the Blue Dog Tavern from its current home in 638 Stocking into 634 Stocking. The expansion of the alcohol use, because it is open until 2 a.m., does require Planning Commission special land use approval. The applicant is also asking for outdoor seating, which with alcohol service until midnight, and that requires special land use approval. Along with that is a parking waiver request. The subject properties are located in the TNTBA zone district on Stocking at 4th Street. This is not a very good image because of the angle. I actually wish I had put in a couple of Google Street Views, but the building at the corner in which the current use is located, the Blue Dog, that was, before the Blue Dog, it was the Copper Top, and many years ago, it was a bank, and you can see that if you visit the site. Next door to the Blue Dog is, I think it's just called the Guest House. I think originally it was associated with the Arsulowitz Funeral Home, and there were funeral luncheons held there. When the applicant purchased the building for the Blue Dog, at that time, he came in to ask for hours until 2 a.m. We also sort of brought in the guest house so they could have alcohol service there. So now the applicant is proposing to demolish the back portion of formerly the guest house and use that as an outdoor courtyard. And I think the applicant will be able to talk to the details, speak to the details of that better than I can. I'm just going off the application and plans, but that's proposed to be open. And the portion of the building that is along the street here is going to be an expansion of the existing restaurant and bar. So you can see the additional seats there. The 634, actually, you can see it here, 634 Stocking, the guest house building. It's sort of an L-shaped property, and it has some frontage on 4th Street. The applicant is proposing to, expand the kitchen into that area and have some storage and I think trash enclosure there. The expansion is anticipated to accommodate approximately 37 patrons indoors and 122 patrons in the enclosed outdoor courtyard. The indoor hours of operation until midnight, and they're proposing midnight for the outdoor seating. I think I had a typo in there originally. I had 2 a.m. for the courtyard. They're not proposing 2 a.m. for the courtyard. That's been fixed, but if you printed out your packet, it will be it will reflect 2 a.m. It's midnight. So one of the elements under consideration would be really the appropriateness of that midnight closing time for the outdoor seating. They're also proposing, as well as food and drink, to have some activities such as curling, beanbag toss, and bocce ball. What the plan shows, and I'd missed that originally, which I updated, they're proposing to cover the outdoor surface in pea gravel, and generally that doesn't count toward our green space requirement. There is some green space on the site. Actually, yeah, it is right here. I'll go back to a different. You can see on this slide, there's a little bit of green space to the east of the building. So that does count toward green space. I guess it would be right here. I don't know what percentage that will be. There is an opportunity, depending on what they want to do, to add some more green outdoors. And I do wonder about the pea gravel. I think that might end up being tracked indoors. I think we'd prefer to see, a hardscaped patio with some green, impervious surface. But I think it's up to the applicant. Relative to the elevations, I did mean to put an image here from Google Street View, but there are some windows in the guest house building, and the applicant hasn't, I think they're not quite ready to determine how they want to address the elevations. I think they have to do some of that demo work and figure out exactly the condition of the building. It is their intent to keep the existing windows. And so in this case, I think we can defer that to staff, so the applicant can work with staff on those elevations when they come in for permits. And in this case, we can just concentrate on that outdoor use, as well as the expansion of the indoor use and the parking waiver. So originally, back in, I think this was 2014, this went to the Planning Commission. There wasn't, any there wasn't any parking for either of these sites. And so we just considered them non-conforming, or as people say, grandfathered in. So they didn't have a parking requirement. We haven't been able to find any occupancy numbers set by the fire department for the guest house. So we're just going to have, so based on my discussions with the fire department, we would just consider the occupancy to be 49. So I sort of gave them an occupancy of 49, and then to determine what the deficiency would be for this expansion. So it comes out to be deficient by 28 parking spaces with the additional, the expansion of the indoor seating and the outdoor seating. There is on-street parking in the vicinity. The applicant did provide a map of neighborhood parking, and they do have an agreement with, I think it's this lot across the street, for 8 parking spaces. So they do have, an agreement to use 8 parking spaces. So the Planning Commission would be looking at a parking reduction based on the availability of on-street parking and public transit. The applicant did provide a summary of neighborhood outreach, and we did receive a number of letters from surrounding businesses, which has provided letters of support, and we did receive a letter from the West Grand Neighborhood Organization, which does support this expansion. So in sum, we're looking at the adequacy or the appropriateness of the outdoor hours of operation, and whether that is an appropriate use. I might also ask you to think about the adequacy of any kind of buffering inside and the surrounding uses, and any other sound mitigation, and the adequacy of available district parking. Do you have any questions for me before I turn it over to the applicant?
Did you say that it's the outside area would hold 122?
I think that's what the application said.
Okay. Are there any standards around, I know for interior there is, I didn't know if there is for outdoor area, how many square feet?
I'll defer to the applicant to indicate how that was determined.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll invite the applicant up then to add anything they would like.
Afternoon. Fred Macra is here. We bought the Blue Dog about 7 years ago, and really didn't have plans for the kind of expansion we've gone through. It's been extraordinarily well received. We like to think that's partly because we are good neighbors and we have a concern for the neighborhood. We had an opportunity to purchase the building next door from the Arsilowitzes, and thought it made a lot of good sense to do that. It's fallen into a lot of disrepair, which is maybe why he was selling. I think he tried to get a quote on redoing the roof, and people not only, it wasn't that the quote was high, roofing people said, we don't want to touch it, we're not going to go near the thing. They didn't know what they would find. So we decided that we would purchase it with the idea that we could expand our kitchen. We do a lot of business out of a very tiny space now, so that seemed to be a good fit. I wrote down what I actually told my architect that, when we were brainstorming this, I don't want to screw up the Blue Dog, and probably one correction or clarification. This area here proposed to be covered. I wouldn't call it inside. This is going to be outdoor area. This is covered with a roof or something that would make it 3-season, but outdoor. So we wanted to, my first task for my architect was, I don't want to screw up the Blue Dog. It's a good thing. We like it. We don't want to change the feel. We don't want to change the business plan. We don't want to change the menu. So the entryway is back through here and here to get to an outdoor area. This would be the main way to get out to the outdoor area. Going this way covered, this way completely outdoors. So important to add to the outdoor area. A lot of the surrounding businesses, and probably Bridge Street, that's where people want to be in the summer. Our business takes a precipitous hit in the summer, especially in the spring when people are, the weather comes out. So we see a very big drop, and we would like to be able to offer outdoor seating as an option for our patrons. We wanted to add, we'll need to add, I think, per code, bathrooms. So adding a couple of bathrooms here, those will be new. This is actually, here's our kitchen, and this is where the bathroom doors are now. So we walk our food past the bathroom doors, and people are waiting. That's kind of a mess. So reworking this so that we have a hallway here that will serve bathrooms here and here. So all 4 bathrooms serve through this hallway, which will be new indoor spot. That's really the only indoor spot is right there. We want to expand the kitchen and on-site dumpsters. Currently, our dumpsters and our grease dumpster are across the street in this parking lot that we'll talk about in a minute. We'd like them to be on-site. We'd like them to be covered. They're now out. It's an eyesore. I don't like it. We don't like it. I'm guessing other people don't like it. So here would be an enclosure, dumpsters and other storage back there. So that was sort of the plan, the idea, the concept. I believe it is compatible in the uses pre-existing and now. I mean, there are lots of outdoor spaces coming down. Holiday has a great outdoor space. Salvatore's has got a very nice outdoor space. The Monarch has a nice outdoor space. We would like to add to that. Prior to the time it really became in disrepair, the guest house was used as sort of a banquet facility. There were times when they sat hundreds of people. They did the Holly Hop there, was an event. I think they did, I forget the name of Polka Pops. They would do funeral catering. So that space has been densely used in the past. The building fell apart, I think, and they sort of lost their appetite to fix it up. So it has been used with the current state of parking and state of affairs. I think our vision, I think probably the commissioner's vision too, is walkability. I think that's something that we want to encourage. We're developing. Bridge Street blew up, and that is walkable. That is a social district. That is dense. We're not there. I don't think we'll ever get there. But as we fill in up stocking, the hope is people can walk comfortably, safely along all of these places. Right now, it's a building that's not being used. It's very rarely being used. So we think with the development immediately to the south of us, the red building, if the guest house is renovated, us, Monarch, Salvatore's, Holiday, it's a nice corridor. We have the morning ritual across the street and the click. The green space, I think we drew in pea gravel because that was probably a default. There's a lot of we don't know yet, quite frankly. I would say to my architect, well, can we do this? Can we remove the roof and leave this outdoor and leave everything? He says, we won't know until you get a permit to start doing demo. We just don't know what we're going to find. So the idea, the hope, is that we save the facade. We'd like to keep what's there now. Windows are there, but brick, there's shutters over bricks right now. It was a theater way back when, so I don't think they liked daylight. So I don't know, there is no glass there. We would like to preserve that front. What I'm told is if you're going to preserve this front, that means there has to be structure behind. We don't know until we start tearing things apart. So that is the goal, the hope, is to preserve that front facade and remove the roof and leave much of the structure, so it's sort of a courtyard. We can take the walls down, but then there's our building and a red building, so it's the same feel. There are natural buffers of a building wall here, a building wall here, our kitchen wall back here. So that, again, we would love to remove most of that roof, support it, have an outdoor courtyard feel in the middle here, bar, undercover, game area, bocce ball comes to mind, no jarts, promise. The curling, there's something called summer curling. We're not going to frost it. There's not going to be ice, but they put them on rollers. They have that in Chicago. It's a fun activity. The parking issue, we understand. I think 638 along Stocking, they don't utilize that parking now. There is a great deal of street parking that is not utilized in the street. The across the street lot, we do rent from BAUJ Properties. Mike Pazuski owns it. The Morning Ritual and we share that. That's immediately adjacent to the Morning Ritual across the street. I think they pick 8 because we both rent it. There's probably 16 or 17 spots. We're going to open up a couple when we take out, knock on wood, when we take out the dumpsters. But the morning ritual has a different, really, their morning coffee. We're not open. They are open when we're open. There's some overlap, but our busy times are not their busy times. I think technically when you're counting, you probably have to say we have rights to half the lot or whatever, but there's no assigned parking. And we have found that, at nighttime when they're closed, we have people parking there. We have not had problems with parking in the past, even when there are events next door, and there have been in the 7 years we've been open. There have been polka pops, there's been funerals. So we have found that has not been an obstacle, and we hope that the neighborhood businesses feel the same. So we did get outreach, and I can tell you, we kind of divided and conquered. We walked the neighborhood, we had letters of support, and personally spoke to people, told them what our plans were, up and down stocking. So Click Lanes, Holiday Bar, Keen Studio, Family Pantry, or Silhouette's Mortuary, TRBL, which is the company that owns the red building that's being renovated immediately next to the guest house, Steepletown Neighborhood Services and Kitchen Sage, Morning Ritual, Turnstile, Salvatore's Italian Restaurant, Icon Sign, CompuCraft. All those businesses were very supportive. And I said, hey, will you write a letter of support for us? And everybody said, well, I'll sign something, send me something. So I put together, and I asked everybody that I spoke to and had my folks do the same, if you don't agree with it, tell us. But they all wholeheartedly agreed. The letter said that we have been good neighbors in the past. They understand what our plan is for expanded kitchen, outdoor seating with alcohol. We found the Blue Dog to be a good neighbor over the years and good for the neighborhood. We support the Blue Dog's expansion and believe that it will improve the neighborhood and increase desirable business in the Stockbridge neighborhood. We have one dissenter. I think Frank's here, and he'll probably speak to that. Tried to reach out, stopped by a few times, left my phone number. Happy to talk with him and try to address any concerns that he has. So that's the master plan and the idea. We think it would be good for the neighborhood. We think we're going to add employees. Hard to do, but we're going to add employment and hopefully some green space. Again, I would love to see trees in there. I don't know what's dual, movable partitions with planting, greens, not just because it's good for the environment and part of the city, but it makes it a pleasant place to be. We don't want it to be on a gravel in between two buildings. No one will show up. So we plan to make it comfortable, desirable, and hopefully green. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions at this time?
I have a few, Mr. President. Fred, you'd mentioned, or can you discuss the restroom area? So that's going to be fully enclosed and heated?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yep.
all year round?
So the indoor addition, so this is the current Blue Dog here, and the guest house wraps around behind us now, and there's a little alleyway. We're going to hopefully expand the kitchen this way, so this will be enclosed, new, and there will be this little bump out, which is mostly 2 new bathrooms indoors, with a hallway that goes down so you can get into 4 different, and there'll be a pass-through coming from inside the Blue Dog to the outdoors through here, is the idea. So yes, the restrooms will be fully indoors and closed with doors on opposite sides, not in the flow of the kitchen.
And then the covered area there in the front, what do you envision? Is there going to be a roof or?
Yeah, so early, I mean, something that, again, is desirable to center, maybe trellises, maybe the idea would be that we can get, if the weather's not great, people will still be able to sit out there. It'll hold heat in, it'll keep some rain off, some sort of a roof structure. I don't know if the roof is the right word. The thing that comes to my mind, which I don't want to use because I hate the look, corrugated tin, that's not what I want to do, but just something that gives you some shelter,
Okay.
but you're still feeling like you're outdoors.
Okay. And will that be visible then from the street?
Will not be. So the theater, it's an interesting building. The stocking side was the back of the theater, and if you go up, they still have old movie cameras up there and a little spot where the guy ran his cameras down to the film. So it stands pretty tall. All of this will be below, and I really don't want the feel that, so it will be below that level. You will not see anything, hopefully, if we can preserve that front, which is the plan. you won't see anything different than you see now. And if that isn't savable, we'll do something comparable and maybe identical to keep that look.
I just encourage you to connect with the planning department, your design team, to discuss the roof material specifically. You talked about corrugated metal and.
Don't want to do it. I get it.
So-
Don't want to do it. I just, something that is,
Yeah.
I don't know how to, not drywall, something
Sure.
that's weather resistant and serves the purpose. And we will, of course, coordinate, yeah.
Thank you.
I wonder if you could explain or talk about your ideas, why you have, you're choosing to keep the facade along stacking and not opening it up to the streetscape there.
So, partly because it looks good. I like the way it looks, and it kind of fits with what we are now. And if we made the paint colors match, the feel matches very much. And we have, when we went into the copper top, I'll get going and I'll bore you with all the detail, but we started pulling down drop ceiling and saw all this amazing crown molding, and we started pulling paneling back, saw these amazing windows. So I love, and it turns out people love just that, preserving the history of it.
Sure.
We'd like to do that here. We'd like to keep that facade. There will be people who are upset that it's no longer the guest house, and I get that. But we'd love to bring they're huge cameras, put them down, make them part of the feel, and keep the way it looks now because it looks good. We like the way it looks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We'll open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this case, come to the microphone, state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Frank Lennon. I own the Monarchs Club right across the street from the Blue Dog. I like everything Fred's talking about with his plan here. We've always been supportive of improvements in the neighborhood. The only concern I have is the parking, and part of that is just looking at what's moving forward over there in that neighborhood. There's a building that's right across the street from Blue Dog, and kind of behind me on 4th, there's a 14-unit, would be this building right here. So there's 14 units planned for that, and I don't know what they did as far as addressing parking for that. This is my parking lot right here. I've gone and talked to Fred's managers because I have a lot of issues with his customers parking in my parking lot right here. Every time I've mentioned it to them, it's kind of fell on deaf ears. And even though the guest house, I grew up on the west side, so I know this neighborhood like the back of my hand. I know that went to school with the Arsalowitzes, but when the guest house had funeral luncheons over here, everybody walked over from the parking lot that's across the street that's attached to Arsalowitz's funeral home. And my understanding is that the Arsalowitzes sold all that property to developers, so you're going to have more density going in there. And that's the concern with all this density. Is anything being addressed as far as parking? I know I was required, I bought this building right here because I was required to put a parking lot in there when I opened the Monarchs Club for at least 25 spaces. Now the concern is not only is he increasing his capacity here, but he's increasing his employees. Employees need a spot to park too. So as much as I like the plan, if there was some way that he could address some parking to go along with it, I think that would be a benefit to everybody in the neighborhood, to be honest with you. And we don't know what's going to happen with the owners of the lot there on the corner. They also own the apartment building right next to, between me and Salvatore's. And I believe there's 4 units in there. I know they had pulled some permits to deal with that, but where are those people going to park? So just kind of the big picture thing. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on this case? All right, we'll close the public hearing and invite the applicant back up if there's anything you'd like to respond to. And I don't know if you addressed Elizabeth's question about the occupancy, where that came from.
I probably didn't. I don't know how, I think Clement addressed occupancy based on square foot in ways that don't make a whole lot of, I don't understand well. I mean, I count the little dots and there's not that much. Honestly, we wouldn't want or probably envision that many seats. 100 total, and we were calling it inside and out, but adding 100 seats for that whole new space is probably where we would land. I think we're going to bump up against the number of bathrooms we have. We're going to bump up against occupancy. So I think that'll probably be set where it lands, not by our choice. But, you know, I would envision 100 new seats. And I appreciate Frank's concern, and he's right. He's been a great neighbor. We send people over there after they're at the Blue Dog. Our employees work well together. So I appreciate his concern. I can tell you now that all of this Stocking Street that is here is parking. Here's a bus stop, not there, but here and back here and across the street here. Nobody parks there now. They don't. I think it's because it's a busy street, but there is parking available in those spots. I think this plan, you guys know better than I do. Oh, shoot. This plan is off, I think. I don't know if that's going forward, but I did look when it was up, and they did make sure that there was going to be parking for that building. If we had the land, we'd put in something maybe. We don't, and I don't think that should stifle growth or the business. Of the people in the neighborhood, all of them have the same issues, and they are supportive. Many of the businesses, not all, many of them have opposite hours that we do. CompuCraft doesn't have people parking on the street or around it. Keen Studio, or Silhouettes doesn't. The Steepletown Neighborhood Kitchen, Morning Rituals, Morning Icon, CompuCraft, they're on different hours, different times. So it's not like all of these businesses are all at once. But I would like to envision people are not saying we need to park out front or drive. They park and they walk, and maybe they start walking up from Bridge Street if there are lots of things coming up. We have a scooter or a bicycle. It depends on one of those places where people will take those, and it's right across the street. So I'd love to see people take those and make it walkable. And if there are concerns, and I don't know, I believe Frank when he says he talked to our manager. I don't think it probably falls on deaf ears. It's probably we don't know who's parking. We have a place with people in it. We don't know who's parked there. If we can do something, and that's the kind of thing I'd be happy to talk to you about. I don't know if we put a sign up somewhere that says, please don't park over there. We have the same issues in the lot across the street. We have people see they park there. We put a sign up that says Blue Dog and Morning Ritual only, and Cherry Street Health, which is also in the neighborhood, won't be there at night during our busy times. They park there. So it's a thing. I mean, it's kind of, it's growing pains is the way I look at it. It's not always perfect. It's growing pains as you develop and grow, and on balance, I think the growth is better than someone having to park down the street a bit and walking to our place. Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Elizabeth, do you have an idea of how many parking spaces on the street are in the vicinity?
Well, the applicant has provided this exhibit here to show the parking spaces they have counted. So, there's a number on Stocking, and at nighttime, at least right now, they're the only evening use in this area. And then, we do have, Monarch to the north and Salvador, and then the Holiday. So I think it's a little more congested as you get to the north. One thing I wanted to mention, if that answers your question, is that I apologize for misunderstanding the plan. So I think then there are 37 seats in the existing Blue Dog, and assuming an occupancy of 122 outside, which may be a bit high. Adding in the the parking the parking credit for the guest house, the use would be deficient by 18 parking spaces. So we're looking at a waiver of 18 parking spaces, not what I said before. So.
Thank you for that clarification. Any discussion?
Unless there are any other questions, I think that this is a wonderful addition to what has become a neighborhood icon, and I know I've driven over there for burgers plenty of times and been able to find parking. So I think that the addition just makes it even more of a neighborhood place, and as well as attracting from what's going on Bridge Street. So I'm in support of the project.
Fred, could you discussed those parking spots and that you have a relationship or some sort of connection to that group. Now, is that formalized?
Yeah, we have a lease.
Okay, great.
And frankly, it may be that Morning Ritual has the lease, and then we send a check each month. So there is something in writing that sort of memorializes, and yes, it is a formal relationship. It's not just we're squatting. We have signs up that say Blue Dog and Morning Ritual parking only, which work sometimes. But it is a formal relationship, yes.
Okay, thank you.
If you want to just stay there for just a second, I have one more question. So you had walked the neighborhood, basically got support on your form. We saw that in the packet. Was there any discussion with any of those business owners regarding parking? I mean, there are private lots throughout that whole area. Have you made the effort to talk to any of them about off-hour parking?
We haven't said, can we rent or anything along those lines. It didn't come up, quite frankly. I think people...
It didn't come up before you came to the Planning Commission to ask for a waiver of more than 18 parking spots in a clustered neighborhood?
When we went to each of the businesses, it didn't come up. They didn't say, hey, we have a concern with the parking issues. How are you going to address it? So, no, we have not addressed that with the neighbors, quite frankly.
Thank you. I mean, we're always going to have parking issues in these neighborhoods. We talk about this every time a Bridge Street project comes up. We talk about it. I mean, this is just kind of, I think, where we are, unfortunately. But I do like to think that, if we have, to Fred's point, if you're friendly already with those folks, like, let's see what can happen, down at CompuCraft or whatever. But yeah, I just like to see that happening usually before they come to these meetings. Because we know that there's a deficiency, we have opposition in the neighborhood already. We have some, concerns about the building materials. I just feel like there's a lot of questions here that haven't really been answered. I'm not opposed to the project. I mean, you have the best tater tots, like, in a 5-county area. It's been proven. So I think, like, those are just some of my, I guess, lingering questions before an approval. No, I think I'm good. But I think those are some questions that come immediately to my mind that I think that other commissioners would have to, that probably are on people's minds.
I'm counting the parking spaces from this, just south of 4th Street there on Stocking, and it's like something like 20 spots there. And the other thing is the hours, as the applicant mentioned, are different than necessarily the business hours. So I think, building another parking lot, or just, it sounds like the community has learned how to live with each other to do that. But density is what makes a neighborhood walkable and attractive, and really people feel more comfortable walking past a building than a parking lot. So I feel like there is going to be adequate, and if there isn't, then people will use bikes and transit if it's that great of an attraction to get there.
Yeah, I was going to say, we only have this problem in vibrant neighborhood districts, so we'll celebrate that. I think we've also found that there are certain things that the city can do, like provide district parking and so forth, but the best solutions are when the neighborhoods and the business associations work together and figure it out. In this particular case, I would be in support of this use here.
I'm willing to make a motion. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the site plan review and special land use request of 638 Stocking LLC for the expansion of an existing restaurant with alcohol service and outdoor seating, along with a parking reduction at 634 and 638 Stocking Avenue Northwest for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will reflect the purpose and intent of the TN-TBA zone district to include active uses such as retail and restaurants on the ground floor. The proposed outdoor seating will contribute to the vitality of the business district. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of 5.12.08.E because the site and building will be brought into conformance with all provisions of the zoning ordinance relative to and proportionate to the extent of redevelopment. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and natural environment because the proposed use will support the desired mix of small-scale retail service, entertainment, civic, office, and residential uses to enhance the vitality of the area. The potentially adverse effects arising from the proposal will be minimized because appropriate buffering and screening is proposed from abutting residential uses. Adequate on-street parking is available in the vicinity. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, or odors because the scale and hours of the operation will limit the intensity and impact of the use on other uses in the vicinity. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the reuse of the site with the building located at the street will create vibrancy in the district. The use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the proposed use is substantially similar to other uses in the neighborhood. The use as proposed to be operated by the applicant will not have any or minimal negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the primary use is as a restaurant serving food for consumption on the premises during all hours of operation. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to the project. A, standard condition set A approvals as are noted on the screen. B, that the restaurant may operate until 2 a.m. with seating on the outdoor patio operating Sunday through Thursday no later than 12 p.m. and Friday and Saturday no later than 12 a.m. C, that this approval does not include outdoor entertainment. D, that additional soundproofing elements shall be incorporated to mitigate the impact of outdoor seating or nearby residential properties with details to be provided with the LUD's permit if necessary. and that 634 and 638 stacking shall be combined prior to the issuance of the LUD's permit.
I support this, but do we want to have a little conversation quick here about the operating times? We didn't really talk about that in our initial deliberation.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for Elizabeth, but I was looking up, but that's what I thought you had said.
They requested midnight.
That's what so did I did that correctly?
Yeah, so it all depends on, I left a blank there, so you could put in whatever time you found to be appropriate.
Is that good with everyone, or?
Maybe we could have a little insight on neighboring properties with outdoor seating and their times. Fred or Elizabeth, do you know that?
I heard 12, sorry. I heard 12 p.m., which I think is noon. The hope is that we're
Yes.
open until midnight, yeah.
I caught that too.
Yes, there, you're right.
Or is not the vision, but okay, so.
I read that,
I know. And
but I didn't realize that probably wasn't making
yeah,
sense.
I could see you wondered about that. So the proposal is midnight. I believe that's consistent with what the Holiday's doing, what the Monarch is doing. I don't think Salvatore's is probably open until midnight, but it's my understanding, Frank's here, he can address it. Parenthetically, the owner of CompuCraft, I learned when I went there, also owns the house that's immediately behind us. He's in support in that context, and at least some of the tenants are in support because they're my employees. So I don't think midnight will be inconsistent with what's going on in that neighborhood or disturbance.
Elizabeth, what have you found?
So it looks like Holiday, 10 p.m. during the week, Friday and Saturday, midnight, Monarch, 10 and 11. I don't think I have anything for Salvador's because they didn't come to Planning Commission when we, it was already established. I mean, there's a number of other ones on Bridge, but I think that's a different neighborhood.
So we're looking at, I should amend this or to read outdoor patio operating Sunday through Thursday no later than 10 p.m. and Friday and Saturday no later than midnight. Is that?
Anybody else have any? Lawrence? No? Okay, support 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. and then midnight, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
All right, are we clear? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes, thank you. We'll move on to our next case, 2035 28th Street Southeast. Another Carlberg takes the mic.
Okay, the next case, 2035 28th Street Southeast Suite Y, is a request by Link Learning for a drop-in virtual learning center for high school students located on the lower level of the two-story Grand Central Plaza shopping mall. And educational uses require special land use approval in the MONC zone district. So on this screen, we can see that this property is in the MONC Modern Era Neighborhood Commercial Zone District, and the Community Master Plan also designates this subject property as commercial. Regarding the surrounding zoning and land uses, to the northeast, it is zoned MON MDR, and there is a railroad right-of-way as well as the Viewpoint Apartments and the Safe Haven Ministries Family Shelter. To the east and to the south, it is zoned MONC, and there is the easterly building of the Grand Central Plaza shopping mall, as well as a restaurant use down here. To the southwest, it is zoned NOS, and there are various office uses. And then directly to the west, it is zoned Special District Open Space, and this is the Indian Trails Golf Course. Regarding the existing building and site information, this property operates as part of the larger Grand Central Plaza shopping mall, which is located north of the intersection at 28th Street and Englewood Avenue Southeast. The Grand Central Plaza shopping mall is comprised of these two separate buildings, which are located on 3 different parcels. And this westerly building is a total of 58,328 square feet, and that is distributed between the 2 levels. It is important to note that this building from the front, as shown in this picture, appears to be 1 story. However, this building is 2 levels, and the lower is accessible from the rear of the building, as shown in this picture. This is some elevations that also show this 2 levels as well. So this is the view from 28th Street or the front of the building, and this is the view from the back of the building. And the Grand Central Plaza shopping mall currently supports a variety of retail, restaurant, and service uses. Some of the businesses in this plaza include Buffalo Wild Wings, Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Official Driving School, and West Michigan CPA Services, as well as other establishments. And the subject suite is currently vacant, but was previously used as a banquet hall. Oh, can I zoom in? Okay. So this project entails only Suite Y in the building, and this is on the lower level, directly below Buffalo Wild Wings. The main entrance to this use, there's an arrow right here, but it is also on the lower level and accessible from the rear of the building. And this proposed project does not entail any site changes or earth moving, and this project, this site already has adequate infrastructure and services at this location. Okay. This is an image of the proposed floor plan, which is 5,369 square feet, and this is supposed to include an open learning space shown here. There are, I think, 5 offices in this area, as well as 2 bathrooms, and then there's also a conference room. Relative to the operation, Link Learning currently has about 16 centers across the state of Michigan, and enrollment of approximately 200 students is anticipated at this location, with typically 15 to 20 students in the center at any one time. Typical hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and staff may stay later occasionally as needed. Students typically spend 5 to 10 hours a week at this center, where certified teachers provide in-person tutoring. Each student is also equipped with a laptop and Wi-Fi in order to complete work from home or at the center to best fit their individual needs. And there are currently 10 staff members employed, although not all are expected to report at this center every day. Regarding the parking requirements and site circulation, the applicant anticipates approximately 5 students to drive to the center on a daily basis, and also expects most students to either take the bus or be dropped off at this location. There is a rapid bus stop in front of the plaza in this area, and that serves the West 28 route along 28th Street. For educational uses, they require 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet, plus 1 per classroom, auditorium, and office use. So based on the floor area of 5,369 square feet, there being 1 classroom and 5 offices, 12 parking spaces are required for this use. And this site plan indicates that there are 107 parking spaces at the rear of this building, as well as various easements on site to facilitate shared parking, ingress, egress, and utility access within the plaza as a whole. So therefore, the existing on-site parking is sufficient for this use. Regarding neighborhood concerns and outreach, this property is not located in a neighborhood or business association. However, as part of outreach, the applicant has distributed an introductory letter to tenants within the plaza that explains their proposed use, and the landlord also distributed a letter informing tenants that they would be on site Friday, July 22nd from 3 to 4 p.m. to answer any questions and show the space as well as their planned future improvements, and no correspondence in support of or in opposition has been received by staff to date. So in sum, the key considerations for the Planning Commission today are neighborhood or business concerns, if any are expressed during the public hearing, and the impact of educational uses in the MONC zone district and at this location. Are there any questions?
Thank you for that information and explanation. Is this an accredited school? Yeah, okay, thank you.
I would defer to the applicant to
Okay.
answer that question.
We'll invite you up in just a moment. Thank you. Do we know if when students are dropped off, are they all dropped off at the same time, or are they staggered throughout the day?
I think the applicant can also answer that question, but I think the nature of educational uses, they have surges.
I think in this case, it's a drop-in center, so they probably are coming at different times, but I think our applicant can confirm that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kate? All right, thank you. And we'll invite the applicant up to address those things and anything else you'd like to point out.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us. My name is Christy Teal, and I'm the Executive Director for Link Learning. To give you just a little bit more of a background, if that is okay, about what we do. We service students that have either dropped out of school already or are at risk of dropping out. Our goal is to keep them engaged so we can get them to the finish line of a high school diploma. We currently service about 2,100 students across the state of Michigan, as far north as Marquette and as far south as Schoolcraft and Three Rivers. Up until July 1, we had 13 centers all over, and we actually have 3 centers right here in the Grand Rapids area. And then as of July 1, we have 3 new centers that are coming on. So to answer your question around the enrollment and when kids come in, when students come in, they don't typically stay for a whole day. They will drop in for a time to meet with their mentor. They might need some additional help from their teacher. They may need to sit down with the center director, which would be, if you think of a traditional school, it would be like the principal, because we make sure that we have a center director in every one of our centers. They typically will stay, it might be very quick, it might be an hour, it might be 2 hours. We do have some students that will stay the entire time, but that is very unusual. Most of our students that come for this particular center are in the Elger Heights area, and I'm kind of turned around, so like towards Burton. So I don't know if that's south or whatever direction that is. And we actually already have a Link Learning Center in Elger Heights. It has been there since 2016, and we service right around 200 students out of that center, but we've just outgrown it. It's about, I'm going to guess, 2,000 square feet, and we're trying to service about 200 students. The students in and of themselves are not the issue. We have so many staff members now, because every time we hit 35 students, we add another staff member. So with the amount of students that we have 6 staff members that are servicing them either as teacher or their mentor. But then we have just recently added a school social worker and 2.5, which equates to 3 bodies of, we call them behavior coaches. But when you hear the word behavior, most people think bad behavior. When it comes to our students, the behavior we're talking about is non-engagement or lack of motivation. So we have hired them so they can actually go out and work with our bottom 20% of students that are not motivated, not engaged, maybe not doing their schoolwork, so they can start to help them eliminate their barriers so they can start to do what they need to do to graduate. And the Elger Heights Center that we have, I think I said it's been there since 2016, and the only reason why we're trying to get to move is because we need a larger facility. We're at the point, because that facility is so small, we have staff coming in and rotating between working on site and working from home, so we have room for kids.
So this is an accredited school that kids graduate from?
They do. We are an online high school program for alternative education, but we actually are, we're an alternative program for Berrien Springs Public Schools, which is way down here. So they get their diploma from Berrien Springs Public Schools.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions for our applicant?
Christy, are you closing the location then in Elger Heights?
We will be closing it eventually, but we will probably have it operating out of two places until we can get the new center up and running. And we want to make sure we give enough transition time for the students so they understand, and we can try to help facilitate getting them where they need to be.
You have some overlap probably between your hours of operations and the neighbor, which is a bar. What kinds of, I guess, concerns do you have as an educator in that regard, or are there any, or?
We run from 8 to 3. Typically, we're not there in the evening at all. On any given time, we are usually between 15 and 20 students. It's right around 10% of our population. We do have some centers that maybe only have 100 students at, and they will typically have 8 to 10 being there. So we don't have any reservations about that, because kids don't loiter. They come in, they do what they need to do, and then they leave.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Open up the public hearing for anyone who would like to comment on this case. Please make your way up to the microphone. State your name and you'll have 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn to our deliberation.
I'm in support. I think it's pure genius to put high schoolers in a mall. I would suggest even a bigger one would help me motivate my own children to get to school. But it seems to meet the criteria and all the zoning applications for this site, and also offers an alternative to our children in this increasingly complex COVID, am I going to school today or not, or off-site learning. So I'm in support of it.
I agree. I think that the facility and the parking lot checks all the boxes here for us. So I'm in support of it.
Having used the official driving school recently, I would add that that seems compatible, especially because their operation tends to be on different hours, even so you get diversification of the parking lot use.
I can make a motion, unless there's any further deliberation. Okay, thank you. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of Link Learning Christy Teal for an educational use high school drop-in center located at the Grand Central Plaza Shopping Mall at 2035 28th Street Southeast, Suite Y, for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will reflect the purpose and intent of the MON-C zone district to accommodate a broad range of business, service, and commercial uses. It will contribute to the mixed-use character of the plaza, and will bring a vacant property back into productive use. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment, because the proposed use will support the desired future character of the neighborhood by offering a use that will complement other nearby uses. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use of the neighborhood and adjacent properties will be minimized through the provision of adequate parking, placement of buildings, structures, and entrances, as well as the location of screening, fencing, and buffering, because building structures and entrances are appropriately oriented and allow for circulation on the site, and adequate parking will be provided for the use. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, odor, glare, or visual clutter, because traffic impacts are expected to be minimal as traffic to and from the site is anticipated to decrease relative to the previous use in the suite. The traffic generated by the use will be limited to specific pickup and drop-off times, and students are prohibited from smoking within 1,000 feet of the building and loitering after school hours. No outdoor or late evening activities will be conducted. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment, because the building is an existing structure and the site layout will not change. The applicant anticipates that many students will be using transit to visit the site, increasing pedestrian traffic. I'm going to amend that. The applicant anticipates that many students will be using transit to visit the site, increasing pedestrian circulation. The proposed use will safeguard the health and human safety and general welfare of the public, because the site is currently improved with public infrastructure capable of handling the proposed use. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city, because the proposed use is not expected to result in a need for additional city services. The proposed use will put a vacant suite back into productive use. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Please see on the screen standard conditions set A approvals that I won't read because they've been read already. And that concludes my motion.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Our next case will wait for 5 minutes for us to take a short break, as is our custom after 2 hours. resume with our next case, 2910 Eastern Avenue. Sarah.
Hello, Commissioners. So for 2910 Eastern Avenue Southeast, our next case, the applicant, Timothy Barker of Big B Coffee, is proposing to construct and operate a drive-through coffee shop. Drive-through facilities are a special land use in the zone district and require your consideration and approval today. The master plan future land use map designates this area as commercial, and as you can see from this image, the entire surrounding properties are all within that commercial district, and not directly abutting the property, but nearby is a residential zone. The existing property is approximately 28,622 square feet in area. The previous use for this property was also a drive-through only restaurant, but that terminated its operations probably a few decades ago. And in 2019, the building that was on the site was ordered by the city to be demolished. Additionally, there's also an existing pole sign on the site, and that was erected in the late 80s. However, the applicant does intend to reuse the sign, but we will review that administratively with the planning staff, given that we need some additional information on the location and the rights of the sign. The project, one second. Just wanted to zoom in to get a closer look at the site here. The project will include this single-story building of approximately 800 square feet, a dumpster enclosure to the east of the property, this drive-through lane, as well as 10 parking spaces, one of which is ADA compliant. No indoor seating is proposed at this location. But there will be a walk-up window, which I'll show later on the floor plan, to provide an ordering station for pedestrians or cyclists in the area. The proposed hours of operation are 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., and approximately 3 employees per shift are anticipated. The new building is proposed to be 25 feet from the front lot line, which meets our minimum setback requirement, whereas the 10-foot side and 25-foot rear setbacks are also met. The applicant has indicated efforts to rebuild this dumpster enclosure in the same location as the previous use, because the existing one needs a little bit of sprucing up. So they'll be redoing that enclosure. In terms of materials and lighting, the primary building, or the only building here, will have masonry with some concrete windowsill features, which meets our material requirements. Additionally, the transparency requirement appears to be met as well. Oh, and this is the walk-up window where pedestrians or cyclists could come to order, as well as an entrance that you'll see on the floor plan here will lead them to a small vestibule and restroom area. So this would be Eastern Avenue along here, the drive aisle, which comes around the building this way. And employees are to use this entrance here along the south side of the building. And although there is a doorway here, this will be locked so that customers cannot enter the barista area. In terms of parking, this drive-through use would require 2 spaces per service, and there's 1 service requested here. So they would need approximately 3 parking spaces. 10 parking spaces have been proposed. There is bicycle parking also proposed here just south of the building. And For parking areas that are within or abutting commercial uses, the parking lot rear setback must be at least 5 feet. There's no issue there. As I mentioned, they also meet the side and front setback requirements. They also meet the green space requirements, as well as the landscape buffer requirements. The proposed site does also include that there will be striping for pedestrian access here up to the walk-up window. And there is existing sidewalk just outside of the property here. They don't intend to make any revisions to that existing sidewalk. I did want to mention one thing about the parking is that it does appear that this ADA compliant space is situated in front of the front building line. The zoning ordinance does require that all spaces need to be behind that line. So planning staff does recommend that a revision to the site plan, redesigning, moving this space over this way so that it can be behind that front building line boundary. Back to the drive aisle, it is wide enough to allow for cars to both be in the drive-through lane as well as exit should they need to leave prematurely. The site is expected to generate mostly daily trips during the morning commute, which to them is between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. And that is anticipated to generate approximately 150 to 180 trips per morning. The remainder hours of operation, so that would be 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., are anticipated to generate anywhere from 5 to 40 vehicles per hour. We did have our city traffic engineering staff take a look at the site circulation, and they did not feel that further queuing analysis was needed at this time. As I mentioned, all of the green space elements and requirements appear to be met, and they do intend on adding a few more trees on the site to spruce up the site. So, in terms of neighborhood outreach, no details of neighborhood outreach have been provided to me as of date, and no correspondence in support or opposition has been received. So in sum, we ask you to consider whether the drive-through use is appropriate for the site and to consider any neighborhood concerns that might come up during the public hearing.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah at this time?
Sarah, did you talk about I'm sorry if I missed it, but any lighting?
I did not specifically mention lighting. They did provide a lighting plan, which would be reviewed more in depth at permitting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then we'll invite the applicant up to add any additional details you'd like to share.
Good afternoon. My name is Zach Boovy with VK Civil. I'm here with the owner, Tim Barker, of the applicant, excuse me.
Could you speak up or get a little closer to the mic for me, please?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, Sarah, for your report, and Commission for having us here. As Sarah mentioned, this was a hot and now drive-through building. Most of what you see here on the site plan is existing, and we were hoping to utilize that. Obviously, the building would be proposed and new. One thing we would like to request as you review this site is that the parking out front that does go past the front of the building, since that is existing, we ask that be allowed to remain. If I zoom to this image, thanks.
No problem. And then you can just scroll.
Okay.
Scroll through there.
Thank you. If I go to this aerial image, there are several other commercial properties neighboring with parking adjacent to the sidewalk, and this spot would be the ADA spot, which would provide a more direct access to the front of the building for the pickup window, as well as we're proposing landscaping out front as a barrier from Eastern. Does the Planning Commission have any questions for the site or the applicant?
Was it considered to have, or what are the reasons for not having indoor seating as a neighborhood, more pedestrian-friendly kind of place?
Yeah, if we go back to the site plan, it's a very small lot. So to fit a building within the setbacks and provide the capacity for indoor seating, it's very constrained. So this was the previous use, and maybe there could be a more creative person than me, but this seems like the best use for this lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Yep.
I'll open up the public hearing for anyone who would like to comment on this case. Please come on up. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the commission for deliberation.
Maybe somebody from staff could just address the parking recommendation that was given, was that it be moved back. Does that still, like, if they combine two spaces, would that still allow for enough spaces for that area? I mean, I guess I don't understand why this is so contentious, but also how to fix it.
Okay, so it's established that this spot is in front of the building,
Yeah,
right?
I get that part.
Okay, and your question is if they combine?
Yeah, like what if they just like scooch it back?
Oh, yeah.
That was a technical term, is probably scooch it back.
Scooching it back would be not
obviously
only
an engineer.
required, but also desirable.
Okay, so would that still allow, though, adequate access for the ADA, potentially the person that has the ADA compliance issue to be able to still pick up in the front of the building?
Sure, I'm not an expert on the ADA requirements, but I do know that that is something that the traffic engineering department, when they're doing the permitting, they would make sure that the
Okay.
spaces are the appropriate size.
Okay, so then let's say, due to the scooching back and the combining of a spot, let's say, we would still meet the parking requirement for that?
Correct.
Okay. My dad would be so ashamed he was an engineer, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm generally in support of this. I would just need that part fixed.
I support it as well. Vacant for that long is just a shame, and it'll be nice to have some activity, and God, you can't have too much coffee, right? So.
And even without indoor seating, I appreciate the walk-up window. It's a nice touch.
I agree. All right, I'm happy to make the motion. Any more discussion before I do? Okay. Now therefore it be resolved that the Planning Commission approves a special land use request of MT3 Holdings LLC, Timothy Barker, to construct and operate a drive-through coffee shop at 2910 Eastern Avenue Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will reflect the purpose and intent of the MCN-C zone district to encourage a broad range of business, service, and commercial use in appropriate locations. The development on an underutilized property will enhance the vitality and encourage additional investment in the area. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.2 12.8, period E, because as a new development, the site has been designated to meet all standards and requirements with modifications permitted by the zoning ordinance. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment, because the use will support the desired mixed character of the neighborhood and adjacent properties. And the addition of a drive-through coffee shop will introduce a new use within the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because the intensity of the use and site orientation are appropriate to its surroundings. Adequate vehicular stacking will be provided. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, smoke, odors, or noise, because the addition of a drive-through coffee shop is not anticipated to significantly disturb surrounding tenant property or use. The proposed use would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the proposed improvements do not exacerbate the existing conditions on the site, which are already auto-oriented in nature. Is that correct? The establishment is intended to be accessed by a range of mobility modes to allow for inclusive service. The proposed development will retain as many natural features of the landscape as practicable because additional landscaping and green space will be added. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services do already exist or will be provided at no additional cost. The proposed use would not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the proposed improvements will encourage additional investment in the neighborhood. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A on the screen. Thank you. Number 2, that the parking lot be adequately marked to define vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian circulation within and to and from the site. That the parking lot be redesigned to allow for all vehicular parking spaces to be situated behind the front building line.
Support.
There's a motion and support. Is there anything that we should say relative to the sign?
No, we'll review that as a team at a later date.
Okay.
We just need a few more items from them to establish the rights.
Great.
All right, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Our next case is on Dean Lake Avenue.
For our final case today, we'll be looking at 2014, 2020, 2046, and 2070 Dean Lake Avenue Northeast. The applicant, D.A. Blodgett St. John's, a social service facility, currently occupies its main campus here at 2355 Knapp Street Northeast. Additionally, D.A. Blodgett St. John's received approval last year to expand onto this parcel here, which is 2172 Dean Lake Avenue, as part of their overall master plan. The applicant now desires to expand their campus to these 4 parcels on the corner of Knapp and Dean Lake for outdoor activities. All of these properties currently abut the main campus, thus creating a congruent expansion of the overall campus. Social service uses, as well as their expansions, require special land use approval in residential zone districts. As you can see from this image, the subject parcels, as well as the entirety of the surrounding parcels, are all in residential zone districts, with most of the main campus being within a low-density residential district with some medium-density residential zone districts surrounding it there. This is an overview photo that shows the parcels as well as their proximity to the residential areas. This, on the right-hand side of the image to the east, is their main campus. And this would be the subject property quadrant, I'll call it, that you'll be reviewing today. As you can see, one of the subject parcels does have an existing home, as well as a small pole barn structure, which we'll look more in depth at throughout this presentation. The existing home is slated to be demolished by the applicant. However, they would like to keep the pole barn as its current condition is pretty good, and they would like to use that as part of their campus. This is an overview of the master plan that was shown last year, and as a reminder, this was the section of the property that was up for approval, and that got approved, and now we're down here in the lower quadrant where they would like to retain this space as natural features, and they've indicated that there is a small community garden that they would like to remain in place as well. So from this image, you're able to see this is where the existing home is that is to be demolished. This is where the existing pole barn is, which will be used to store tools or other materials they might need for the garden. And you'll also notice on this image that there is a walking path. That currently and has also not been indicated to be improved surface or impervious surface. As it stands right now, it is a man-made natural walkway generated from foot traffic or vehicular traffic to transport items from the previous use. I did want to mention, although this is a master plan of the overall campus, there are a few parcels situated right in the middle of this development that have no intention of selling or becoming part of the main campus. The planning staff does ask that the commission determines the desired hours of, we'll say, operation for this outdoor space. But what we're really getting at is determining the appropriateness of when that community garden and pole barn and walking paths should be utilized by the kids and staff that live and work within this campus. It is recommended that these outdoor uses align with the current hours that the campus operates at. The applicant indicated intentions to reach out to surrounding residents. However, no information on that outreach has been provided to us to date. 2 letters of opposition from adjacent neighbors have been received at this time. And as I mentioned, back in 2021, it was determined that both in 2021 and in 2018, when first formal conversations started with neighbors, they held 3 community meetings. They received both support and opposition of the project at that time. In sum, your key considerations today would be to determine the appropriateness of expanding the campus within a residential zone district, and also the impact of this proposed use on nearby residents. Do you have any questions for me?
Quick question for you, Sarah. Is this a lit path? Is this just a natural?
I haven't physically stood on that property, and I wasn't provided any up-to-date photos. So my interpretation and assumption is based off the photo that's on this diagram.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, they didn't indicate any plans to pave that walking path.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
One other question. Is this open to the surrounding community, when you call it a community, or the community of St. John's?
Those 4 properties are owned by St. John's, so I believe they're only used by DA Blodgett St. John's,
Okay.
and that they only permit those residents.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And we'll invite the applicant up to add any additional details you'd like to share.
There you go.
Sorry. Justin Longstreth with Moore and Brugink Engineers representing DA Blodgett today. I also have Brent Balkema with me from Journey Construction. In case there's any questions that the commission might have that I can't answer, I may ask him to come up. Where this request started was DA Blodgett's desire to demolish the existing home that is on the property. As it currently stands, that home is in very poor condition with many of the electrical wiring stripped out, mechanical systems removed, windows removed, and it's really becoming, or probably has been for a while, a safety hazard for the kids on campus. And so the request that they came to us with and that we came and approached city staff with was, what are the avenues that is available to them to demolish that house? And in the city of Grand Rapids, in an LDR district, the home being the principal use on the property, we can't demolish that home in and of itself without having some sort of build back plan. And DA Blodgett at this time in this quadrant is not interested in doing anything more than what they're doing on the parcels today. So it may be a difference in planning terms, but this isn't necessarily a quote-unquote expansion of the use. They currently have the community garden on site. The walking path, it is a path through the woods that the kids and the staff walk on, but it's not improved. It's just a goat path, for lack of a better term. It's just where they walk. And there's no plans at this time to improve that or expand that use. It's really just a way for them to go from the main campus over to the community garden, which they use as an educational use. Teach the kids about farming, teach the kids just where their vegetables come from, and then they use those vegetables as further education in teaching them how to cook and prepare those vegetables. So in working with staff, the special land use of the property seemed to be the appropriate avenue for this, to assign the principal use to the pole barn structure, which is in good condition and is used as the educational kind of hub, if you would, for this garden. And educational uses within the LDR is approvable by special land use. And so by assigning that structure as the principal use, we could then demolish the existing home site, which is in poor shape and a safety hazard. So that's really our request today. There's no plans at this point to do anything other than to leave it in its natural condition. So if there's any questions from the Planning Commission, gladly answer.
Justin, do you know if when the space is being used, is it always supervised?
Always supervised, correct, yes. And as far as hours of operation goes, my guess is that it would be during the day. I don't foresee them coming out after dark to do gardening. So it would be at some point during the day that would happen.
Is there somebody available from the organization to address that concern?
As far as the hours of operation, between Brent and I, we can certainly try. I don't know if those hours of operation are set in stone, but it's certainly open to conversation with the commission on that, if there's hours that they'd like to set.
The current hours of operation are Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Fridays.
And that's for the rest of the property?
Not sure if Carol could get that for the minutes, so you mind stating back what you heard?
Would you hit the mic?
So the current hours of operation for the main campus are Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and on Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the reason for trying to identify the hours that this area could be used was based off of concerns from the nearby residents.
Yeah, and supervision, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, correct, yep.
So maybe the applicant could address just like what would be the neighborhood impact of bringing down the building? How long would it take? What type of disturbance to maybe the rest of the neighborhood might this have?
I would guess fairly minimal disturbance. Any construction traffic associated with the demolition would all happen on property. So there wouldn't be any lane closures or road closures, certainly nothing of that nature. To demolish a house, you're probably looking at a couple of weeks. And then the plan would be for the area that was disturbed to restore that to natural conditions.
Back to the garden area, do you know if there's artificial lighting there?
I don't believe that there is.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? All right. Then we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone who would like to comment on this case, come up, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Debbie Westerheis. I am the president at Maple Grove Association Condominiums, and only a small majority received the notice for today's public hearing. But I know that there have been a couple letters that have been sent, but some of the people have expressed to me their concerns for this project happening. And right away, talking about the demolition of the house, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we just went through a whole month of having Dean Lake closed off to all of us because of all the work that they were putting into the infrastructures for the 25,000 square foot building for DA Blodgett. Anyway, we've had some instances with the students coming through our neighborhood, and we're very concerned about our safety and the security. And we're just afraid that putting a structure this close to Dean Lake just will now involve more of the students being around our association, and we just don't want the problems. So, and we're concerned about lighting also, whether or not there'll be enough lighting around where the garden areas will be, and that's what we're concerned about. We're 82 condo units, and we're all a lot of older people, and they are concerned. And now, unfortunately, we have to tell these people, keep your doors locked, keep your garage doors down. We've had a woman that had bicycles stolen out of her garage, and there's just a lot more activity with the students coming through our neighborhood, and that's what we're concerned about. And I did call and talk to somebody at the St. John's, and they basically said that they can't do anything if there's students walking through our private property, and they told us to call the police. And we don't want to live this way. So the students just aren't being supervised enough. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. They're not being supervised, and now they're going to have all this more open space, and it's just an open invitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Rose Otto Siepel. I'll spell that last name, OTTO-CEPEL. I live in Dean Lakewood condos, which is just north of the condos that lady lives in. And I was in Florida when the notice came through when they were going to do the other remodeling. I'll tell you, it's been nothing but traffic. It's been dust and debris. The contractors have been taking their tandem trucks with 2 trailers and going through Tavern and then coming out Remington Way, which are private. We pay for our roads. And these big trucks, not only that, those front-end loaders, they would load up with dirt, and then they'd come through Tavern and go out Remington Way and drop their dirt on the streets. We called our property manager, Cheryl Condom of Grand Mark Properties, and she contacted the contractors, and she told them, you are not to be on those streets. It did not stop. I contacted the police of Grand Rapids. They told me there was nothing they could do about it. Now, I know that they have citizens that volunteer. I said, can't you just put somebody by our entrance to tell them, no, you can't come through here? Then they closed off Dean Lake Road. No, that didn't stop the people. Whew. And I've tried for years to get them to slow that speed down north of Aberdeen because it's 45. When they get up to where it says 35, south of Aberdeen, they don't slow down. They're going 45 and 50. Now we've got the sidewalks where the kids are going to be walking. I'm telling you, please, 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 don't let this go through. Last Friday, I tried to make an appointment, and I tried to get out Remington Way, and the guys stopped me. They were filling up tar and stuff at Remington Way. He said, well, go down and go out the other road. First he said, go down and go out to Knapp. I said, I can't. We only have 2 entrances to this condo association, other than Wildfield that has their own entrance. So I went down the other way. Darn if they didn't have a truck down there working too. I couldn't get out. So I came back and I said to one of them, you move that cone. I have to get out of here. So he moved it and I scooted through. Okay, and then we asked, like I said, we asked for help from the city, couldn't get anything. I've called the Michigan State Police. They're the ones that are supposed to do the speeding. But, you know, I even asked them to put a counter up there and try to get, you know, somebody to, I know there's a citizen's arrest in the city of Troy because I used to work for the police department for 26 and a half years. I'm just asking you, and I'm concerned like that lady said, the kids, now they got a sidewalk that they can walk out on. All they got to do is come across the street in our condos associations. Please don't let this go through.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment at this time? All right, we'll close the public hearing and ask, yep, Justin?
Appropriate for me to address maybe some of the neighbors' comments?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think, again, in the planning report, it indicated that this was an expansion of the use, and it really is not an expansion. The uses that we're talking about today, as far as the community garden and staff and students walking from the main campus to the community garden, those are all things that happen today. So we're not asking for an expansion. We're not asking for construction of any new structures. This is really, again, just a way to facilitate the demolition of a structure on site, the house, that is unsafe. So I just wanted to point that out. We had talked a little bit about the lighting already. There's no artificial lighting or any lighting out on there. And then, while I understand that's not part of the request today, I am involved in DA Blodgett's current construction project, and I can talk to the contract about construction traffic. So that is something that I certainly can do, realizing that it's not part of the consideration today, but we can do that.
Great, thank you.
Justin, you'd mentioned in the application outdoor performances. Can you discuss that a bit further? And is staff managing or overseeing those uses on the site?
They are. Currently, where my cursor is on, there is just a small little stage that the kids use for performances in the woods. But it is all supervised by DA Blodgett staff.
And there's no like amplified sound or anything?
There's not, no.
Did they consider fencing around the property?
They didn't. We did read the staff report about noise and safety, and So with it being a vacant parcel, I guess I don't understand the noise aspect of it. There's a handful of kids that are gardening or putting on a play, so it's not, and it's a 4-acre parcel. So I would suspect that the traffic on Dean Lake and Knapp probably would be a bigger noise generator than anything that the students are doing on site. And then from a safety perspective, it's just as easy to go to the city sidewalk on Knapp and walk down the street for these students as it is to make their way through the woods. And if you've ever driven by or been through this property, very terrain, very hilly, probably would be just as easy to walk on a flat city sidewalk. So for those two reasons, we don't see the need for a fence.
I just want to make sure I understand, those activities are already going on. This is really just about the demolition of an unsafe house that's an eyesore.
Correct.
That could cause a safety hazard, among other things.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Justin, can you talk about the challenge, I guess, of engagement with the neighborhoods and community? What processes did you folks go through to?
Yeah, we did reach out to the neighborhood association, and I forget the name of the neighborhood association, but we did speak with the president, and maybe Sarah, you can help me with the name of the association that you put me in contact with. But we did speak with them yesterday. We had sent some emails to the community or the neighborhood Facebook page and just didn't get a response. And then I had reached out yesterday for a phone number and was able to speak with them on the phone. Obviously, it wasn't in time to get into your packets, but according to the president, they didn't have any concerns with this. The name of the association escapes me right now. So what is it? NECA? NECA. So, but yeah, so we did reach out and it was a little late in the game, but.
You want to explain the neighborhood association
So the majority and actually the entirety of the campus is not within a neighborhood association boundary. NECA's boundary, which is the Northeast Citizens Action Association, they're just south of Knapp. So as a way to encourage the applicant, we provided a Facebook link and an email that we had for the association, to which we were contacted yesterday that they needed some help getting a phone number. However, there was no indication of neighborhood outreach for the adjacent properties to the west, east, or north.
And then our postcard mailings go out to whom?
300 feet surrounding the subject properties.
So would that have gone to each condo resident, or would it go one to the association?
It would go to the addresses of the condo, of the property owners, right? Not all owners necessarily might live there. The neighborhood association itself does not receive one of the 300-foot notices.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, it seems to me this project's pretty limited in scope, and it really comes down to removing a detriment on the property and to everybody surrounding a house that's in terrible repair and could cause others to utilize it. And so by the removal of it is the removal of a nuisance. So therefore, I'm in support of this project.
Just if only for the record, I just have to say, and I feel like this is just repetitive, so maybe I should just print out a paragraph for each meeting. I understand, I am not naive, that crime is up all over the country, but you are no more prone to violence or You should not be thought of to commit more crime because of your skin color, because of your age, because of where you were born and raised, because of where your parents work, or anything else. Crime is crime, and it is not because of any of those factors that you do not control that will make you to commit crime. So I do sympathize with the neighbors, with the only exception of locking the door. I mean, you live in the city. I've lived in the city all my life. I've never not locked the door at night because you live in the city. So that comes with the grounds. The more people that you have, the more things you do to safeguard you and your belongings or personal things. It's just the nature of it. And then if I didn't like it, I'll move out to Wyoming where nobody lives. But here, I just think that it's important that we keep Wyoming State, not Wyoming City, by the way. Wyoming State. Not I always forget that. We do have a Wyoming City. People definitely live out there. But I just think it's important that we repeat that and that we not allow the perpetuation of those stereotypes based on skin color or age or any of those other factors. So with that being said, that's all I have.
I appreciate, Justin, your willingness to reach out to the contracting people. That is something that we all deal with in our lives. We encounter construction sites all the time. That's hard to avoid. It's a sign of progress in the city, so we try to look at it that way, but we can get perhaps better service from that team.
I'm willing to make a motion if we're ready. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of D.A. Blodgett St. John's to expand the existing institutional use by demolishing a vacant house and repurposing the existing pole barn structure as a principal educational use at 2070 Dean Lake Avenue Northeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will provide a service for the convenience of residents in the vicinity. The property will be utilized for social services that will enhance and support the adjacent existing campus. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood adjacent properties and the natural environmental, because activity associated with the proposed use is not anticipated to impose a burden on other uses in the area. The proposed use will complement and provide support for residential uses already in the neighborhood. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use on the neighborhood and adjacent properties will be minimized through the provision of adequate parking, placement of buildings, structures, and entrances, as well as the location of screening, fencing, and buffering, because building structures and entrances are appropriately oriented on the site. The installation of fencing along the south and west perimeters of the properties will help mediate potential adverse effects by the neighbors. Can I ask a question? I thought there wasn't any fencing.
Correct. That can be struck down.
Okay, we'll strike that last bullet. The proposed use will be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing the proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, odors, glare, or visual clutter. Because no additional parking is required or proposed, the use will be conducted during typical business hours. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the building is existing and the site layout will not significantly change. The applicant anticipates that only small groups of children will be on site on any given day. There are no sidewalks along Dean Lake Avenue. The building and site area required for the proposed use will retain as many natural features of the landscape as practical because most natural features will remain in place exceeding green space requirements. The proposed walkway will not be exhaustive on the existing natural environment. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the proposed use is not expected to result in a need for additional city services. The proposed use will put a vacant structure into productive use. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Number one, standard conditions set A approvals as are posted on the screen. The hours of use will be consistent with that of the current DABSJ campus operations Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. and 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. on Fridays, and that all parcels associated with this application be combined prior to the issuance of the demolition permit. As the resolution.
Support.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Any further planning commission discussion? And our final public comment is open. Hearing none, it's closed. And we are adjourned. Thank you all.